And we're live. We are live. We're live. Yay. Right. Hello, Will. It's 3 p.m. UK time. And, blimey, look at all that. Look at all those comments coming in. My goodness. Okay, so where we got? Who we got? Good morning from foggy California. Okay. Good morning from North Carolina. Hello from Bermuda. Yeah, nice one. Edinburgh. Yeah, nice one. Netherlands, Shrewsbury. Wow. Canada, Baja, California. Sydney, Australia. Fantastic. Canada, Salzburg, West Yorkshire, East London, Serbia, Denmark, Texas, Michigan, Croatia, Nebraska, Los Angeles, Brazil, Boston, Oregon, Switzerland, Antigua, Cape Town. I can't keep up with this. Bucharest, gosh, snowy Michigan, the Scottish Islands, Copenhagen, Turkey. What? I was expecting about 20 people. Stockport, Delaware, Helsinki, Dublin. I could go on forever. Montpellier. Hi, I'm glad you can hear me. Right. Number of things. I'm going to get shot if I don't do this at the start because I've got a tech team behind me who are sort of pushing me to say certain things. So, firstly, I'm going to give a taster of what I'm doing in 2 weeks' time. In 2 weeks' time, I'm going to do another live stream, and that one's not going to be free. You're going to have to pay for it, and a number of you already have. So I haven't got any diagrams set up for this, but here's an example of what I'm going to be talking about. It's an easy one. If you've got, have I got one to hand? No, yeah, stay there. Right. If you've got one of these, right, and you can't be an astronomer or an astrologer or a geomancer without one of them, draw a circle. And then on that circle, on the north, east, south, and west points of that circle, draw 4 more circles so that the edges of those 4 circles are just touching. Then that will mean on the inside of those 4 circles, you've got an inverted diamond. In the middle of that inverted diamond, draw another smaller circle so it's just touching the edges of that inverted diamond. That inner circle you've just drawn is the orbit of Mars. The first circle you drew is the orbit of Jupiter. And this is accurate to 99.99%. It's accurate to about 50,000 miles over 500 million. Now, in 2 weeks' time, I'm doing a sacred precision geometric live stream on the relationship between all the planets in the solar system and the sun. And I'm going to show that the placing of the planets in the sky and their orbital rotational periods is not random. I'm going to offer suggestions as to what is behind that. I've done this slightly before and I've stopped when I've got to demonstrating it. I've never offered suggestions, but I've been working with this all year in the background. So this is something on the sacred geometry of the solar system I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks' time. And you can find links to it and the box next to this. Now, there's going to be other things I'm going to be pumping. So actually what I think I'll do is get them out of the way now, and then I won't refer to them again. In the new year, all my teaching courses are going to be going online. We've got, I think it's Kajabi. We've got a whole page coming up where there's going to be all of my teachings online. What can I say? No more than that. Then, doing the retreat of Penny Thornton at Amadown, Decoding the Divine. Residential rooms are now 75% sold. There are still about 25 non-residential spots left. Shifts happen too. Is going to happen. We've got the dates. We've got the hotel. I've put a big deposit down. I've got all the people lined up for it. We're going to make the official announcement around solstice, 20th, 21st, 22nd of December. But I'll let you know the dates now for future planning. And there is a waiting list. And again, if you go on that link at the bottom, you'll find links to for the waiting list for Shifts Happen, the Sacred Geometry and the courses. It's all there. Shifts Happen will be around the Taurus new moon in the middle of May next year. What else? Anything else? Yeah, I am doing the retreat in Spain. I've confirmed it. It's definitely happening. And if you want to get on that, you're going to have to email me, because it's only going to be somewhere between 12 to 16 places. And there's already 5 or 6 definitely sold. And that's a week-long retreat in a yoga center on the south coast of Spain, early September next year. Email me for that one. Right. Marketing done. I will pump the Sacred Geometry again at the end of this workshop if there's any of you left. But judging by the comments, hi from Sweden. Will I bring Shifts Happen to Scotland in the future? We are talking about doing Shifts Happen in Edinburgh at some stage in the future, and possibly Dublin. We'd like to take it global. There are certain reasons why we can't do that at the moment, mainly political, and the fact that I probably wouldn't get a visa for America. But anyway, we'll see. So in this session, there's a number of things I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be looking back over 2025 from an astrological perspective, but I'm going to be looking at some of the big stories of 2025. My tech team's just put up a post to say to sign up for the courses, shifts, and the Sacred Geometry. Go there. Yeah, brilliant. Well done. I'm going to be looking back over 2025 at some of the big stories and looking at the astrology behind that. I'm going to be looking at, to a reasonable extent, the astrology of 2026. I'm not going to go into too much detail of it, because I'll be shooting myself in the foot for my forecasts, free of charge forecasts, that are going to be coming out at the very end of this year. A number of you emailed me, I'm grateful to say, with questions for the live stream, and I will be addressing all of them, as well as the couple of questions that came in on the post that we put up. So, where shall we start? Well, I've got a number of charts set up. At the moment I turned this live stream live, the sun was in Sagittarius, the moon was in Cancer, and 0 degrees of Gemini was rising on my local ascendant. I didn't plan it. That's just the way it happened. So this should be probably quite a verbose session. So I've got a number of charts set up. Some of them are, well, they're all global. They're all people who are in the global news. I've not set up charts of countries, but I know the charts of America, the UK, and to a lesser extent, Russia and China in my head. So let's actually start with one of them. Let's deal with the sleeping dragon that no one's talking about. In 1989, Tiananmen Square happened. And I was outraged. I saw it and I thought, this is wrong. So I wrote a little 30-page pamphlet called China Crisis. And as a funny story, I was talking about this on one of my classes 2 years ago, and I said, yeah, there's only about 50 copies printed. I've got one. I don't know what happened to all the others. And one of my students in Florida dug into his bag and held up a copy that he found in a secondhand bookshop in Florida. Sean, if you're watching, it's you. Crack me up. When that happened, I did a lot of research into the horoscope of China. And I worked out that the horoscope of China comes from the moment where Mao Zedong actually banged his gavel on the table and said, I pronounce the Democratic People's Republic of China. That horoscope has both the moon and the ascendant in very early Aquarius, about 4 or 5 degrees. Pluto in the sky is coming up to China's moon and China's ascendant over the next 1 to 2 years. So China is something that no one's really looking at the moment. We're all occupied with Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, Russia, Trump, the British royal family. Yeah. What's China? I think that China will make a move on various properties close to it that they think they should own. We'll see. We'll see. But I think that's the joker in the pack. So what charts have I got? Well, just because I know a number of you have asked me about this. So I'm just going to, I know this won't be of interest to as many of you, but it will be of interest to others. So I've got the horoscopes of various members of the British royal family. I'm only looking at a few of them because most of them are quite boring. Okay. King Charles, 14th of November, 1948, 14 minutes past 9 in the evening in London. Scorpio with Taurus moon, Leo rising. Now, I don't think he's going to be king much longer. I really don't. I said when the Queen died on a void moon, and she died on the moon just past conjunction to Saturn. Charles pronounced himself king right at the moment of a dodgy full moon. And it was obvious from all the charts of the time that Charles will not be king for long. Now, he does have cancer. His wife is surprisingly healthy. William, his son, is being prepared. For those of you that I say, I'm of the school where I'm not a royalist, but I am a monarchist. And the difference is that I think that most of the royal family should just go and get a job. But the land needs a king or a queen. And that's to do with the old magic. You start thinking about antlers and smoky caves and fires if you start going down that road too much. Charles was born with a loose conjunction of the sun with Chiron. Now he's got Pluto coming up to oppose his ascendant over the coming year. I can't see Charles being on the throne that much longer. Whereas William was born on the 21st of June, 1982 at 3 minutes past 9 in the evening in London. When he was born, I was cutting my teeth. I was traveling around the country giving astrological talks to the Women's Institute. Now, I've lectured at big conferences. I've lectured in front of CEOs. I've lectured to big audiences. There's nothing quite as scary as lecturing to the Women's Institute, because if they don't like what you're saying, they will start the slow hand clap. And there's nothing like a bunch of middle-aged, wealthy women giving you a slow hand clap to make you just go like. Fortunately, it didn't happen to me. It did happen to Tony Blair, though. And they were always saying to me, will Charles and Diana, will they make it? And I was like, no. And then William was born on an eclipse. He was born just after a total eclipse of the sun. And when he was born, I looked at his sun and moon opposite Neptune on the ascendant, Sagittarius rising with Neptune exactly on the ascendant. And I said, this kid is either going to be a drug-fueled, alcohol-riddled playboy of the Western world, or he's the once and future king. Now, he does have the middle name of Arthur, and I do like British mythology and legends, so I'm kind of on his side. A lot of my friends over many years have said, no, the marriage between William and Catherine is a sham, it's a fake, they're not suited, they'll divorce. And I've always said, no, they won't. They're perfect for each other. He was born on a new moon. She was born on a full moon. She's a Capricorn with the moon in Cancer. He's a Cancer with the moon in Cancer. They both have Mars. His Mars is at 9 degrees of Libra. Her Mars is at, where are we? Her Mars is at 10 degrees of Libra. So have Mars conjunct Mars. That's really good for physical contact, whether it's down the gym, digging the garden, in the bedroom, or walking the dog. The bodies get on. There's a good tactility there. Also, her Mercury is at 6 degrees of Aquarius, and his Mercury is at 8 degrees of Gemini. So they have Mercury trine Mercury. They're intellectually very compatible. And if I need any further evidence, her Sun Moon opposition is on top of his North Node and South Node. They're together for life. And like I say, I'm not a big fan of the royal family, but the hardcore, Charles and his wife, William and his wife, and their brood, I'll support them astrologically in my own personal opinion. And I don't expect a lot of you to agree on this, but there you go. Right. From there, it's a short step to look at the BS that's been going on in other areas of the royal family. Now, to my shame, not shame, that's too strong a word, to my disappointment, the single most popular video I've ever done was on the horoscope of Jeffrey Epstein. Ooh. But, you know, this is one of those things that isn't going away. So, I've got the horoscope of Jeffrey Epstein. Born on the 20th of January, 1950, hold on. Jeffrey Epstein, 20th of January, 1953, 3:15 a.m. in New York. Now, Capricorn, 29 degrees, 59 Capricorn. So Capricorn with Sagittarius rising, moon in Aries. Now, there's an unnervingly weird synergy and synastry here. Note Epstein's sun at 29 Capricorn, okay? Now, there is a ex-member of a British royal family who used to be a prince, and he's now just a civilian. His name is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He has the conjunction of Venus and Mars and the asteroid Ceres, which deals with mummy, nurturing, and digestion, at 27 and 28 degrees of Capricorn. So his Venus and Mars together, and when you get Venus and Mars together, it does create a strong sensual and sexual drive, regardless of which direction it's pushed into. His Venus and Mars is on top of Epstein's sun. It gets more complicated. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's number 2. Now, the whole Maxwell story, for those of you who don't know, her father was Robert Maxwell. He was a nasty bit of work. He bought his way into power. He ended up owning a major national newspaper, and he raided the pension funds to look after his own lifestyle. He stole millions from the common workers. And then it wasn't widely known that he had a very strong, how can I put it politely, subterfuge? No, behind the scenes connection with elements of the Israeli government and elements of their services. I'm not going to go too deep into that in public. And then one day he was found drowned. He fell off his yacht when he was the only one on it. What a coincidence. Now, all of his children, some of them stepped up when Ghislaine Maxwell went on trial, and some of them just went, no, don't drag me into this. Since the trial, all of the children have disappeared from public view. Ghislaine Maxwell has Saturn at 28 degrees of Capricorn. Her Saturn is on top of Epstein's sun. Her Saturn is on top of Prince Andrew's, ex-Prince Andrew's Venus and Mars. She was the fixer. She knows where all the skeletons are. And I suspect that in the event of her demise, a lot of stories are going to suddenly come out. I suspect. I'm being deliberately provocative by saying that. I don't know. Interesting little comment come up here. Was Epstein murdered? Who knows? I don't know. I just find it very strange that his cell, which was under 24-hour camera surveillance, went through a 1-minute malfunction at exactly the minute that he hung himself. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? I can think of a large number of people who might seek to have benefited from him not being able to talk, but that's probably just me with my paranoia. So, you know, yes, exactly, Amanda. Join the dots. A number of people are going, yes, Maxwell was awful. He was, yes. So let's come out of that particular cesspit. Although, actually, no, not quite. There is one more. And this is something which no one's put join the dots on yet. I'm just going to throw this into the mix and see what happens. I also happen to have the horoscope of Sarah Ferguson, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's ex-wife, who has been living in the same property as him for the last 20 odd years since their divorce. Now, she was born on the 15th of October, 1959 at 9:03 in the morning in London. She has a conjunction of Venus and Pluto on the midheaven in Virgo, which is very astute in financial dealings, but it can be amoral and it can be quite ruthless. Now, she's been associated with a number of business deals that have fallen by the wayside, but she's a survivor. Now, what I find fascinating, and this links in with everything I said earlier, is that Sarah Ferguson's moon is at 6 degrees of Aries. Jeffrey Epstein's moon was at 5 degrees of Aries. When you find two people with the moon in the same sign, they really get on. Moon conjunct moon, or at least moon in the same sign, is one of the very best things for relationships, because you dance around each other in the kitchen. You don't speak so much because you know what each other's feeling or thinking. You like the same music, similar movies. There's a great similarity at the emotional level with moon conjunct moon. If you're fortunate enough to have a friend or a partner who has the moon in the same sign as you, it's much more likely that that relationship will be long lasting and happy. I had a chat. I've just seen comments on the temperature. I had a chat with my friend Rick Levine a couple of days ago, and he looked at me and he said, "Are you cold?" And I went, "Yeah, it's snowing and hailing here, and it's 0 degrees. It's England in winter." And he's like, in t-shirt. He's in Goa. Of course he is. He's going, "Oh, 31 degrees here." I think, okay. Right, let's come out of the cesspit of this, but not completely, because I want to bring in the American element, not the way that many of you think. I will get to what you think in a minute. But I happen to have the horoscope of that nice Bill Clinton. 19th of August, 1946, 8:51 a.m. in Hope, Arkansas. He's got a fascinating chart. He's a Leo with Libra rising and the moon, and completely unaspected moon in Taurus. Clinton was born with the Mars conjunct Neptune on the ascendant. He was also born with the Sun sextile Uranus and the Sun sextile Jupiter. He could talk his way into and out of anything. He is a liar. He lied. I did not have sex with that woman. Yes, he did. So he did lie. He has Mars conjunct Neptune on the ascendant in Libra. Libra rising. Maybe. Yeah. No, don't know. I don't know. What do you think? Mars conjunct Neptune. It's a strange mix. I have them square. It blends the physical with the spiritual. So it can easily be addicted to narcotics, alcohol, chocolate, sex. But it can equally be the blend of the physical with the spiritual in terms of Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, Pilates, music, dance. I found the answer to my Mars Neptune was to just get on a dance floor for 3 hours to a nice bit of low level trance. That sorted me out. Clinton's got Mars conjunct Neptune on the ascendant. There's always going to be something of the nebulous, the evasive. I can't see him. On the one hand, I can't see him ever getting pulled up in front of a congressional hearing. And if he were, I would be cautious. I wouldn't go so far as to say he would lie. I would go so far as to say he might not tell the whole truth. What I do find fascinating is that Clinton had Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Chiron, Neptune, and the ascendant, 6 planets in Libra. And in 2026, in mid-April, there's going to be 7 planets in Aries opposite all of his stuff. And I expect Bill Clinton to be going through some very interesting developments around the 17th of April, which I will come back to that date later on. And whilst we're here, I might as well, if I'm going to talk about Bill Clinton, I might as well talk about Hillary. Now, I know that she's a character who's loved or hated with equal passion in America. A lot of people think she's the devil incarnate for a number of reasons. She's a Scorpio with Scorpio rising and a moon in Pisces. But she's got a lot of planets in the 12th house. But she also has a very strong conjunction of Mars and Pluto in Leo, squaring her Venus. Now, she's incredibly resilient, thick-skinned, stubborn, direct, projective and assertive, and she will never surrender. I find it difficult looking at her birth chart to believe that she would be as badly implicated in anything amoral, abusive, aggressive towards children as many people seem to think she is. I wouldn't say she's clean as driven snow. There's something of the night about her with all that 12th house and Scorpio, but I don't think it's nasty. Just saying. Whereas her husband is, no one's ever going to get to the truth of that one. Okay. Let's come out of here. Who we got next? Well, I am going to dive briefly into American politics, and then I'm going to come out of the politics and look at some of the questions that a lot of you have sent me, and then I'm going to have a look at 2026. Right. So let's start with the orange one. 14th of June, 1946, 10:54 a.m., Queens, New York. And that is his horoscope. That is his date of birth. I've seen a photocopy of the birth certificate and it's for real. Gemini with Leo rising, moon in Sagittarius. On the one hand, he was born with a strong square from Mercury to Neptune. I think it would be anyone with a strong square from Mercury to Neptune especially with Mercury in Cancer, I would say, look, you're not a creature of rationality, logic, and analysis. You're a creature of dream, imagination, and vision. And with Mercury square Neptune, sometimes it's easier to see the world as being the way you want it to be rather than dealing with it the way it really is. And of course, he was born at full moon in Gemini and Sag, so everything's going to be amplified with what he does. He also has Mars on the ascendant in Leo, which is not given to humility. Now, to me, he's the psychopomp. He's what the world needs, because he's polarizing situations in a much faster way than would otherwise be the case, thus accelerating the headfirst dive into the point of no return, which we're all approaching collectively. Otherwise, it would be a long, slow crawl, but because of his presence, it's a fast acceleration. And if you didn't have Trump, you'd have Vance. I know which one I'd prefer. And whilst we're on that subject, I know I've mentioned this before on YouTube, but I will mention it again just for the astrological record. Vance, J.D. Vance, whose horoscope I do happen to have. I've got all of these people. And it's all in the public domain. Well, one or two of them I dug out myself, but most of it's in the public domain. J.D. Vance was born on the 2nd of August, 1984. It's kind of weird. I'm 30 years older than him. He was born at 8:11 a.m. in Middletown, Ohio. Okay. Leo with Leo rising and moon in Libra. What I find fascinating, he was born with a less than half a degree square from the sun at 10 degrees Leo to Saturn at 10 degrees Scorpio. He's born with Sun square Saturn, which is really difficult when you're young, but it's great when you're old. You're one of these kids that's born old, you get younger as you get older. What's fascinating isn't so much how it works in his character, but how it presents itself when compared to Trump's. Trump's Pluto is at 10 degrees 2 of Leo. Vance's Saturn is at 10 degrees 1 of Scorpio. Vance's Sun is at 10 degrees 22 of Leo. So Vance's Sun is exactly on top of Pluto, of Trump's Pluto, and Vance's Saturn is exactly square, precisely 1 minute of 1 degree square to Trump's Pluto. Pluto rules Scorpio, which in Trump's horoscope is the 4th house, ancestry, roots, foundations. And I do find it just a little bit incongruous around the stance of Trump with his current ranting against immigration, because his paternal grandmother and grandfather and his mother and 2 of his 3 wives are all immigrants. So no contradiction in terms there then. I think that Trump and Vance don't trust each other as far as they can throw them. I think that they genuinely feel a little bit uncomfortable in each other's company. When one person's sun is on top of another person's Pluto, there's always this feeling from both sides that it's just like, oh, I've got to watch my back. There's something going on behind the scenes here. And when Saturn's involved in a square, it's like they're each carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders with a sense of gravity and density. So I wonder, I can't see these 2 guys going out for a beer or a burger. Can't see it. Bearing in mind, on America, the horoscope of America is Pluto return, Uranus is hitting it. You know, so much going on. It can't go back to being the way it is. It can't go back to being the way it was even a few years ago. The days of two-party politics are hurtling towards the destruct button. There's bound to be some type of fragmentation, which I hope will be just political, resulting in a lot of different political parties, so there'll be some type of consensus. Otherwise, we're looking at a total disenfranchisement, which means probably secession. But then the big countries are getting unwieldy. Russia's got republics siphoning off all over the place. China's having trouble managing its borders, the extremes. America. And yet no one wants to end up like Europe with lots of little fiefdoms. Personally, I'd just get rid of all borders and have a global currency, but that's me. What else have we got? Oh, couple more. That nice Mr. Musk, Cancer with Virgo moon and Cancer rising, but Sun square Uranus. He's trickster. He's trickster. You never quite know what he's going to come up with next. And he's there lurking in the background. Now, I expect he's got Uranus on top of his Saturn at the moment. I think he's about to sort of try and revolutionize a lot of structures in America. Now, when I say revolutionize, that could be nihilistic and destroy them, or it can change the structures from concrete and steel into rubber and elastic, where you can bend the rules instead of breaking them. And I prefer that, obviously, because it's not so violent. Right. And then I've just done a little bit of digging just before I come online, because there's one character in the American administration who really puzzles me, because I'm thinking, who are you? How did you get this role? It's a man called Pete Hegseth. He's a vet, but he appears to be a poster boy for Brill Cream. He appears to be unloved. I know the military, I have a number of, well, I'm not going to go into details. I have clients in the American military at various levels. And they all say that his role as Secretary of Defense, he has, well, this isn't me saying this. This is what I'm getting from at least two individuals in the American military. He has delusions of adequacy. He's a Gemini with Sagittarius rising and the moon in Pisces, all mutable. So he kind of flip-flops a bit. He can't nail his colors to the wall. And he has the Sun square Mars and the Sun square Saturn and a really strong square from Neptune to Saturn. And I don't think he knows what he stands for. I think he's a bit of a chancer. We'll see. I don't see him. At the moment, he has both Saturn and Neptune on his moon and squaring his Venus. So I suspect he's probably on various medications as an anti-diabetes thing or a sugar thing. I just can't see him being in this role much longer. He doesn't have the respect of people. And if you're going to be the Secretary of Defense for one of the biggest nuclear powers in the country, in the world, you need to have respect. Now, you can't buy respect. You can only earn it. We shall see. So that's my quick trip through the sort of the character role of the dramas that's going on. Now, over 2025, I did have a look back at the video I did at the start of 2025. The last remaining drug I've ever taken, black coffee. They'd have to prise that percolator out of my hand when they put me in the ground. I said in 2025 that it was going to be a year of acceleration and intensity as we hurtled towards 2026. And looking back, I wasn't completely wrong. Got a few things wrong, but then prediction's a fool's game. That's the difference between prediction and forecasting. If you make predictions, you're going to get some wrong, and people are going to go, you got that wrong. You're rubbish. Astrology doesn't work. Whereas if you forecast, like the weather forecast, it's not always going to be right, but the general theme will be right. When I do readings for clients, I don't make predictions. I just give them dates and areas and a description of the energy. And what they do with that is up to them. The planets impel. They don't compel. Fate, no, I don't deal with it. Destiny, maybe. I mean, you're here for what you volunteered for, but the way you choose to go about it is negotiable. Right. So before I come to 2026, I do have a lot of interesting questions. Right. So from the emails I've got, I live on the west coast of California, and the US is in its Pluto return. What are we going to be going through in the USA over the next few years? More turbulence. The USA is unwieldy. Can I see the US surviving the current onslaught and assault on its democracy? And what might this look like on the other side? The more it flip-flops between left and right, the more alienated 50% of the population are. The fact is, 50% of the people are Democrat and 50% are Republican. And that is not the basis for a happy country, because it's always going to be half the people unhappy. And it's easy to say, oh, yeah, but it's all the other side's fault. But wherever there's blame, that's the start of the decay. There is no guilt. There should be no blame or shame. That's just the mechanism by which the dominator culture keeps us nailed to the floor. So I think America is going to sort of go through some type of massive metamorphosis over the next 3 or 4 years. I kind of feel the whole role of the presidency and the Congress and the Senate, much as it is in Britain, is going to change. The idea of elected representatives. Look, I'm fine with elected representatives. We have it in this country. We have the House of Commons, the House of Lords, similar to the Senate and the Congress. I think it's a great idea to elect someone from my local area to go to Parliament or Congress to represent my viewpoint. But if there's someone else in the background, you belong to this party, therefore you've got to vote for that. No. If we got rid of political parties and just elected representatives to go to Parliament or to Congress to speak on our behalf, and every time there's a big decision, they come back to their local electorate and say, this is the choice, which way do you want me to vote? And of course, that will never happen because there's too many vested interests in politics. But in the ideal world, we get rid of all political parties, all of them. And wouldn't that make a difference? And wouldn't that bring about a change? And I did challenge anyone to tell me what's wrong with that idea. So, yeah, America's going to go, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But as I said earlier, because of recent developments over the last few years in America, the acceleration of this process is still escalating. So it's going to happen quicker rather than over a long period of time. What was this? I've dealt with King Charles and Prince William. I'm not going there again. I talked about a portal. Yes. Who's this from? Nanette. I talked about a portal. Yes, I did. When I was looking at the coming new moon. Yeah, let's go there. Moons. The moon goes round the Earth. Great. It also goes further away from the Earth and closer to the Earth. 215,000 miles at its closest, 248 at its furthest. So it's like 15% closer and further at times, which is why some moons are really big at full moon and some are really small. But it also goes up and down, which is why sometimes you get a full moon that's right up there and other times you get a full moon that's on the horizon. So it's a completely changing cycle. Normally, the moon goes around the sky about every 28 days 29 days, which is why each full moon and new moon is normally 1 to 2 degrees earlier in its sign than the preceding one. That's its normal pattern. The pattern we're in at the moment is that the moon is in a much more stable orbit around the Earth, and its variation out and in is much less than normal. Consequently, the new moons and the full moons are at the same degree over a 6-month period from September through to March. And I've never seen this before. Any of you with any planets at 13 degrees of your horoscope, all of the full moons are hitting 13 degrees between September and March, and 28 degrees for all the new moons. 2.5 months ago, the new moon at 28 Virgo was the start of this. About a few weeks ago, there was a new moon at 28 Scorpio, conjunct Mercury retrograde, opposite Uranus. That shook a lot of people up. And the next new moon is at 28 degrees of Sagittarius, which happens to be the point in the sky, which is the center of our local galaxy, galactic center. Now, if you think I'm going to get into channeling the Pleiades or Arcturus or Canopus or Sirius, or I don't channel the ascended masters, I channel the descended mistresses. And that'll tell you what I think about channeling. There are some great channelers out there. I'm not dismissing it. I don't do it. Nevertheless, I have no delusions about being psychic or tuned in. I'm not. I'm an astrologer. I do pattern recognition. End of story. And I've got 48 years experience, which is where I can sometimes be good with it. But when I was looking at that new moon a few weeks ago, I thought, blimey, that's right on galactic center. And all of a sudden, I just got this word, boom. It's like a big stamp into the front of my brain. Portal. And I thought, and a number of people said, yeah, but what's the difference between a portal and an opening or a door or a tunnel? And I thought, yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's something along the lines of openings and tunnels and doorways. They're kind of there, they're fixed, they're clear to see. And there's a direct communication from one to another, a passageway. Whereas a portal, I think, is more than this. It's not permanent. I want to say the word diaphanous, but I'm not sure what that means. And B, it's not just about journeying through a doorway. It seems as if by going through that doorway, there's also an upgrade. Now, the stuff that's coming up in 26 is all about upgrade of consciousness at the very minimum. So I do think that this new moon that's coming up in about just under 2 weeks' time is a really significant one and a big step forward. Right. That's that question. What else have we got? Some of the questions were so good, I'm going to be using them in lectures in the future, particularly the one I got about the hybrid between AI and consciousness that's coming. I thought, yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm going to be using a lot of this in my work. Is there a chance that in the first half of 2026 or in 2026 overall, Russia will expand in its war westwards, but towards the Baltics, Poland, maybe Romania? I said about if you got rid of Trump, Vance would take over, and that could be worse. If you got rid of Putin, at least in the last few years, there's been a case, if you got rid of Putin, his replacement would be far more volatile, militaristic, and aggressive. Putin was born with Pluto exactly on the midheaven in Leo, and he's got Scorpio rising, with a sun conjunct Saturn in the 12th house. I noticed a number of you are criticizing me on the thing about privacy. Look, I'm an astrologer. All of this stuff is in the public domain. And if you don't like it, why are you here? Go away. I find it interesting that next year Jupiter's going to stand still very strongly on top of Putin's midheaven and Pluto for about 7 or 8 months. I find it very difficult to believe that Vladimir Putin, who appears to be aging fast, despite all of the, how can I put it, treatments to sort of impress the world with his virility and youth. I find it very difficult to see him being around in 2 years' time. But you can say that about a lot of the leaders of the modern world, whether it's the British royal family, the American president, the Russian president. It does seem as if a lot of the dinosaurs are coming to an end. I can't see Russia invading Europe, because that would lead to a massive global escalation. There is a very strong similarity between the positions of the planets in the sky now and over the next year and this last year to as there was in 1940, 41, 42, a Uranus return at the start of World War II. The appeasement is sickening, in my opinion. But have we learnt collectively? I can't see Russia invading Europe, although never say never. Would I look at the charts of Israel, Palestine, and look at what started it in 2023, the invasion? I know what it was astrologically. When David Ben-Gurion, was it David Ben-Gurion or was it? I'm not sure who it was. When Israel announced its sovereignty on the day that Egypt and Syria invaded it, they were going to announce their sovereignty at midnight, but because Egypt and Syria invaded that day, they brought it forward by 8 hours and pronounced the state of Israel at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Palestine came into existence 8 hours later at the time that Israel was meant to come into existence. They would have had identical charts, but they're 8 hours different. And in both cases, the sun was at something like 24, 25 degrees of Taurus. Uranus was at 24, 25 degrees of Taurus over the last couple of years. And Uranus brings revolution, radicality, rebelliousness. And sometimes that can be disruptive, chaotic, dramatic, unpredictable, and terrifying. And other times it can be innovative, futuristic, novel, and stimulating with words like independence, freedom, and liberty, as opposed to chaos and disorder. And we've seen the negative side of Uranus in the Middle East in the last couple of years. I do feel that now it's time to pay the piper, and the hardcore fundamentalists on both sides are becoming fewer and fewer. So, of course, it's the same with all religion. As religious belief falls out of vogue, so the fewer and fewer people who still believe become more and more fanatical. That's the nature of it. Fundamentalism will get it. The more stronger it gets, the fewer people there are still believing. And then I've got a question about South Africa, and I've looked at the chart of South Africa. Will South Africa ever become a successful nation? Will there be a civil war in South Africa? No, because whilst that was a distinct possibility a few years ago, now there seems to be so much opposition coming to South Africa from other countries that I suggest there's going to be a unification of the corruption that's endemic in all politicians and all governments, but especially in South Africa over recent years, seems to be not at an end, but it's becoming more and more transparent, so it can't go on much longer. I feel for people in South Africa because it's falling rapidly into poverty due to corruption and bad management of resources. This won't continue for much longer. Might happen for another year. Right. What does the future of Scotland look like from an astrological perspective? Well, I think they'll do well in the World Cup. I hope. I lived in Scotland for quite a few years. I'm not Scottish. I love Scotland. I love the Celtic races even more than the English sometimes. What does the future of Scotland look like from an astrological perspective? As long as they are under the yoke of the London government, not very good. But if they become independent, they're not going to be able to survive. It's a tough one. But then if we got rid of political parties and became one unified nation, that would be far more representative and equal. Free Eye Atlas. Right, here's where I lose a lot of you. Free Eye Atlas reaches its closest point to Earth on the 19th of December. Yes, it does. When Free Eye Atlas was at its closest to the sun, it was at exactly the time the Earth was on the opposite side of the sun. We were shielded from Free Eye Atlas' closest point to the sun by the sun. It was in between. We couldn't see it. Since it's come out the other side, its tails are going all over the place. Its ion tails are very colourful. It's giving off weird chemical signatures, unlike any other comet. Firstly, all the other comets, they come in from there and up there and down there. And Free Eye Atlas has come in there on the plane of the solar system that all the planets inhabit. It's come from center of Sagittarius, from galactic center, which is why a lot of people are going, oh, it's a craft, it's intelligent, it's coming from the center of our galaxy, it's a messenger. And there seems to be this desire, cross-cultural. Yeah, okay. I think we're live. All right. I'll cut back to you. Hold on. Okay. Right. Can someone just say yay? And this is me getting paranoid. I was in the middle of a really good rant there, and all of a sudden I lost everything. I lost my emails, I lost stream, and I thought, okay, what's going on here? And I used to be quite paranoid. These days I'm just like, what the? Right, I'm going to try and pick it up. We're 3/4 of the way through. And oh God, I've run out of coffee as well. Okay. Right, let's come back to the questions. Right. Yes, a number of people have asked me about coming into 2026. Oh, here's a great question. How do you know if a social media astrologer is a fake or not? Well, for a start off, I generally don't have a clue what they're talking about. I'm well known for saying that if you need software to do your horoscopes, you're not an astrologer. If you can't do a horoscope by hand, which is where the hat compass comes in, then you're not an astrologer. Having said that, I did all my horoscopes by hand for the first 15, 20 years of my life, of astrological life. I only started using computers around the late 90s. there's a lot of wannabes out there, and I am sick of it on YouTube where you just see this Mercury retrograde is the one that changes everything. This full moon is the one that's going to blow the world apart. It's like, who are these people? I mean, I don't go. I'm not a member of the Astrological Lodge. I'm not a member of the Astrological Association. I don't go to the faculty. I'm not a member of any group. I belong to the Groucho Marx School of Astrology, in that I wouldn't belong to any group that would have me as a member. I want to get astrology out onto the streets and into people's minds and hearts, not in the hallowed halls of academia where it's elitist, which is why I'm not that popular amongst other astrologers. So I am going to be teaching my students how to do charts by hand. What else have we got here? We talked about how the moon's at 6 degrees. Yeah. I'm not going to talk about Trump anymore, or Russia. Right. 2026 is the year that will change everything. I'm sticking my neck out on this. Just a rehash. So for those of you who are astrologically aware, go and get a cup of tea or something, because this is going to take 2 or 3 minutes. Over the last 50, 60, 70 years, the position of the outer planets in the sky have been slowly but steadily gravitating towards a pattern that is coming into formation now, the like of which has never, ever happened before. The only other time this could have happened is something like 14,800 years ago. And to the best of our understanding, the outer planets were not known about at that time. Remember that 10 generations ago, we were still primarily working in the fields. The Industrial Revolution hadn't happened. The outer planets hadn't been discovered. And it was a time of global warfare, the American Revolution, the French Revolution. 10 generations. We've come a long way in a short space of time. 70 years ago, when I was born, spirituality meant being dragged to Sunday school and being told that if you were a bad boy, you'd go to hell, and that you have to be polite to your elders, and you have to say yes sir, no sir to the priests. And if you don't, you'll burn in hell for all eternity. Oh, but by the way, God loves you. 70 years ago, technology was a little dial-up wheel where you put your finger in a thing and rolled it around, and someone at the other end stuck a jack plug in an exchange. And technology was this little brown wooden box with flickering black and white screens, the first televisions, public ones. 70 years ago, there was 2.1 billion people. There's now 8.1, 8.2. Population, technology, and spirituality have quadrupled since I was born. So this is not a linear curve. This is not a straight line curve. It's an exponential curve. Serena Oni-Dougal, first person in the world to get a PhD in parapsychology, likens this to the situation where you get a bacterial or a viral force, a virus or a bacteria, living in a very confined space, multiplying exponentially. And once it reaches a certain number, the mutation occurs, which means it becomes multicellular, requiring less food and less living room. And that number is 10 to the power of 10. Humanity is now at 10 to the power of 9.8. 10 billion, probably 15 years' time. I'll still be alive, I hope. Now, I'm not suggesting we're going to mutate and become multicellular individuals. I am suggesting that the acceleration of evolution in terms of spiritual, technological, and even population growth, is pushing us into an area of our own consciousness and psychology, which we've never, ever known about before. Mix this with the nanotech and the quantum realm and AI. We're heading into a future that terrifies a lot of people who want it to remain the same. And a lot of people are scared by this, and I understand, I really do. But once something's invented, you can't uninvent it. You either go with it or you get dragged with, you either go with it willingly or you get dragged kicking and screaming. And it seems to me that we're heading inexorably into some type of nexus point in the very near future. It's like being on the inside of a pencil sharpener. And once we get to that finite, minute points, analogous to the birth canal, we suddenly expand into glory. Astrology doesn't say what will happen, but it does give us timings. And the movement of Pluto into Aquarius, after spending nearly 16 years in Capricorn, the dominator culture being exposed as being redundant and past its sell-by date, now Pluto's moving into Aquarius, where the ideas of community at its largest level are beginning to emerge. Just as Neptune is moving into Aries, exiting Pisces after 14 years of guilt and shame and blame, and you will believe. And Uranus is moving into Gemini, the sign of quick communication and new technology, after 7 years in Taurus, where it's been like, I've got to make money, oh, my values are wrong, values are changing. And they're all coming into really harmonious aspect with each other for the first time. This has never happened before, and it will never happen again. It is a once in a lifetime. And when you get things like the moon standstills over this 6-month period, at the same time as this is cranking up. Now, a lot of people have focused on the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in mid-February as the pivotal point for all this. And yes, that's a pivotal point, but it's not the pivotal point. So what I've done is I've sat down here in the last few weeks. I've spent days and days and days crunching patterns, pattern recognition. And you know, the more you absorb yourself into patterns, the more than three-dimensional they become, and you find yourself with patterns swirling around you. And out of this, 2 or 3 specific patterns spring out and say, look at me. This is how astrology works for a lot of people. And there's certain times next year which are going to be absolutely critical. And the first of these is before the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. In January, there's a critical period over the 20th to the 26th of January, where you've got Mars in the sky, trining Uranus, sextiling Saturn, sextiling Neptune, entering Aquarius and conjuncting Pluto, all within 10 days at exactly the same time as the Saturn-Uranus sextile and Neptune moving into Aries. This is all happening in the last 10 days of January. Saturn will move into Aries in mid-Pisces and in mid-February, and conjunct Neptune in the 3rd week of February. To me, the period of the last 10 days of January is the final death gasp, if you like, of the dinosaurs, where the desire to cover up and to keep control in a domination way that's been they've been trying to do it for tens of thousands of years, at least the last 2,000 years, there's going to be more and more exposure. And then we get to what I see as the end, if you like. Not the end of life, not our end, but the end of the old. There is a specific point, and this will come in April next year. Over the period of the 13th to the 17th of April, Mercury conjunct Mars, conjunct Saturn, conjunct Neptune, 4 planets, all within 5 degrees of each other, over a 6-day period in early Aries, at exactly the same time as the Sun conjunct the Moon, the new Moon, conjunct Chiron in Aries. There will be 7 planets in Aries, the sign of self-determination. I have never seen 7 planets in Aries. There were 7 planets in Aquarius at one stage in the early 60s. And I've seen 6 planets and 5 planets in signs, never 7. I've checked back. I've used the ephemeris, I've used NASA, I've used AI. There's never been a time where there were 7 planets in Aries, ever. Not in human history. Prove me wrong. This is a once in a species moment. And to me, it's a breakthrough or a breakdown. Sun conjunct Moon conjunct Chiron, bringing an end and a fresh start, getting rid of shame and blame and guilt, and looking to blame others for our problems. Mercury conjunct Mars conjunct Saturn conjunct Neptune. There's going to be a few what I call nut jobs. There's going to be a few cult leaders making grabs for power, and they're going to be knocked down by the weight of no more acolytes, no more followers. It's all self-determined. When people go on about the stock markets, why don't you forecast what's happening with money? Why don't you forecast what's happening with the stock markets? That's based on greed and power over others. The stock market is a fool's game. It's invisible money. And yes, a few people get rich quick and a lot of people suffer. If we got rid of political parties and if we had a global currency, there would be an end to greed. It's not going to happen. Of course it's not. But wouldn't it be good if it did? One currency, no nation states, one species, one currency, no political parties, just everyone voting according to their own wishes and the majority ruling. Changing all the time. This 7-day period, this week-long period in the middle of April, is a critical point. You can hide under the bed. You can run away to a desert island. It's not going to work. If you hide under a bed, the bed will collapse on top of you. You've got to stand up and deal with your own stuff at this time. And this is followed in August by the 3rd and final trigger point, when Pluto will be at 4 degrees of Aquarius, Neptune will be at 4 degrees of Aries, Uranus will be at 4 degrees of Gemini, and Jupiter will be at 4 degrees of Leo. To me, this is the start of the new. Where words like philosophy and psychology, and to a lesser extent, intuition, are going to become much more important. We are at the end of our apprenticeship. This is the end of our training. We've taken thousands of years. Our ancestors have sat around their campfires for 10,000 years dreaming of this time. From 2027, 28 onwards, yes, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto will continue to dance. And of course, Nothing's going to happen on these exact dates, but these are the seed points. These are the points where the seed breaks the surface, where the flower opens. This is the initial alchemical point, which will develop over the next few years or not. But there is nothing astrologically of this magnitude for the next few hundred years. So this is a defining moment in our collective future. There's a lot of bots coming in complaining about the stock markets and why individuals can't make it, and all about the country and individuals. Get over yourselves. This is a species thing. It's not about individual countries or individual religions or individual races anymore. It's a species. Kill or cure. If we don't get this right collectively, within 300 years, we're going to be extinct. Within 10 generations, we'll be extinct because the planet will be wrecked. Greed, fear, shame, and power would have ruined it. I'm not talking about being powerful. I'm talking about being power-filled. If you become powerful, you become corrupt. Look around you. The place is full of corruption. If you become power-filled, it flows through you. You are the conduit, not the owner of it. And you can channel it into other people's lives. They become power-filled and they pass it on. This is the time of self-empowerment and planetary self-empowerment. There's no salvation. We've got to do it ourselves. And the astrology of these times is saying, make it happen. And I'm trying, through the use of astrology, one person at a time, and sometimes one podcast at a time, to try and get people to sort of embrace these ideas. That's all. And that's why in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be doing this geometry thing, because I can show to 99.9% accuracy that the position of the planets in the sky is not random, and what that means, especially at this time in history. So I've been ranting enough and I've been rambling enough. I'm going to be out of here in a minute. And yeah, watch this on playback. Listen to these ideas. Dismiss them at your will. Put me down as a cranky, befuddled astrologer. I don't care. This is my world. I'm responsible for my perception. I'm not responsible for yours. But look around you. Is this the type of world you want to continue living in? And I'm just going to go one last thing, completely off the record now, completely off the wall. What is the underlying force that pervades everything? Well, to quote John Lennon, all you need is love. This is our destiny. To evolve, to become spiritually aware, and to become more conscious of our own divinity, spirituality, and our place in space and time. This is our time, our story, not history, not her story, our story. Use it or lose it. I'm going to dance my way through this next year. And if I'm wrong, hey, I'm having a great time living it. Catch you later, world. Bye.